PFT Media.
What's up, my dudes? It's Billy D, and welcome to the Post-Mortem.
Shut up and sit down.
Episode 7 is here, number 70. This film was 30 years ahead of its time. Nightbreed is a 1990 Clive Barker written and directed adaptation of his own novel Cabal. It stars Craig Sheffer, David Cronenberg, Ann Bobby, and Clive Barker regular Doug Bradley. Right now we're in the middle of this folklore renaissance where filmmakers are making these dark adult fairy tales. Nightbreed is actually a very specific type of adventure story. It's about a young man named Boone who is manipulated by his therapist into believing he's a serial killer. He decides that he is beyond redemption and needs to go live with the monsters. The monsters all live in this subterranean city under a cemetery called Midian. In the late 80s and early 90s, the landscape for horror was changing. The slasher was no longer considered to be effective or a moneymaker, so the studios turned to more avant-garde forms of storytelling in order to continue to make horror films. The problem is, avant-garde horror is actually very high concept and very expensive. Today, if you made Nightbreed, it would be a $150 million film. It would be a tentpole. It's a very effects-heavy fantasy film, really. It's barely a horror film. Nightbreed is epic. It's a whole big thing, and its shortcoming is its budget. The studio just didn't get it. They requested some serious cuts to the film, removing about 35 minutes of footage from the theatrical release. And these 35 minutes amongst the horror community took on these almost mythic proportions. Film negatives of the missing 35 minutes have been found and put back into the film under a supervised edit by Clive Barker, who has blessed it, and they've released it as the Cabal cut. I find it to be a little long, but I also think it enriches the mythology of the film. So I'm for it. I think this is a great film. It was decades ahead of its time. It deserves to be re-examined today. I really would like more people to see what was done on a tight budget with a great story. You'll have one hell of a Halloween film festival if you include Nightbreed. Number 69. At number 69, we have the 1981 George Miller film, Mad Max, The Road Warrior. The Road Warrior follows your stereotypical Western plotline, where this hardened, grizzled man comes out of his shell a little bit when he decides to help some settlers fight off a marauding group of bandits. If you look at it that way, it's very much just like a John Wayne movie or a Clint Eastwood movie from the 60s or 70s. So this is a world where we're not exactly sure what happened, but there was some sort of nuclear war. There's no gasoline, there's no water, there's no society. There's nothing except leather and spikes and kick-ass cars. From a modern standpoint, the action isn't very great, but like these people put their lives in danger to make some of this stuff happen. So get mad, watch The Road Warrior. Number 68. Number 68, we have Mad Max Fury Road. It's a balls-to-the-wall post-apocalypse awesome fest because it's better than The Road Warrior. That's why. This movie is an opera of engines and blood and fire. It's stunning. So this movie stars Tom Hardy as Mad Max, Charlize Theron as Furiosa. They built all these cars and then couldn't get financing to actually make the movie. So these cars sat in storage in Africa for like 12 years, and George Miller just kept writing and refining the script until he had something he wanted. And then they found all these awesome locations. And then climate change happened, and all those locations weren't usable when they had to actually shoot the movie. So the production was delayed another 2 years. And this movie was in development for like 15 years. Mel Gibson was supposed to return at one point, and then he just got too old and too crazy. So they hired another famous crazy guy, Tom Hardy. And he does, in fact, act with a thing on his face. Again, he loves acting with shit covering his face. And check out the black and white cut. It doesn't change the film in any way, but it adds a layer of texture and grime to it. It makes it a different experience. Get mad, see Fury Road. Number 67. Up next, we have a kick-ass little movie called Dredd. It's a comic book movie, and it rules. It's The Raid, but with Judge Dredd. And Judge Dredd is a UK comic book character. He's the judge, jury, and executioner of future fascist Britain. The first Dredd movie from the 90s with Stallone has like 2 moments in it that are really good. Dredd, on the other hand, it's just a lean, mean, shooting, punching, kicking machine. It is so fast-paced and gritty and violent. It stars Carl Urban as Judge Dredd. And one of the things about the comic book character is that you never see his face. In the 30 years that this character's been in print, he never takes off his helmet. In the 90s film, Stallone barely had the helmet on. All you see is helmet and scowl. And the beauty of Dredd is in its simplicity. These 2 cops are going into this one building, and as soon as their presence is made known, building goes on lockdown. It's just them against 99 floors of criminals. It's fantastic. It's fantastic, and it uses the Dredd mythos perfectly. There's a bigger world outside of this building, and you don't get to see that much of it, but you get to see enough to know that it's there. One of the interesting things about Dredd is that Jeff Barrow from the band Portishead did a score for this. It's a very cool, minimalist, electronic score, very similar to John Carpenter's early scores. The studio didn't like it, and they wanted a hard rock score. So they went with blasting guitars and stupid stock music metal, which I love metal. I love punk rock, but I do not want my science fiction films scored with metal. I want them scored with weird blips and boops for real. Just go see Dredd. You'll thank me later. Number 66. I'm going to get this out of the way. I love Michael Bay movies. I said it. Now, at number 66, we have the best case scenario with a Michael Bay movie, and that's The Rock. It is a great, high concept, late 90s action film. A splinter group of Marine Special Forces has decided to hijack a chemical weapon, and they are holding the government hostage. They say they're going to bomb a city with this chemical agent if they don't get certain millions of dollars wired to their fallen comrades' families and recognition on memorials and things like that. FBI chemist, played by Nicolas Cage, and the only man to ever escape from Alcatraz, played by Sean Connery, lead a SEAL team to Alcatraz to break in and stop the terrorists, essentially. Got Nicolas Cage, Sean Connery, Ed Harris, David Morse. Nicolas Cage is super twitchy, bordering on mega, but he's focused on delivering a great performance. This is one of Sean Connery's last solid performances. And Ed Harris is always dependable. Same with David Morse. David Morse is a really underrated character actor. You don't know who he is right now, but if I showed a picture of his face, you definitely know who he is. Michael Bay, I know, but there's no one making movies like Michael Bay. Like, he is an auteur. He's an American action auteur. You know exactly what you're getting into. You can see 2 frames of a Michael Bay movie and you know exactly who made that movie. He puts every cent up on the screen. You're never wondering where all that money went. Is he a bit of a chauvinist? Sure. Is he a bit of a racist? I can't comment on that. I only know what I see in his films. Is he considered a tyrant on set? If you were blowing up that much shit next to that many people who are being paid millions of dollars to stand in front of a camera, you'd be tense too. See The Rock. We made it! We made it through episode 7. You and me, we did it. Please remember, like, comment, and subscribe. And as always, stay cool. I'm Billy D. World's finest coffee.
A PFT Media production.